be great. Okay, welcome to 1000 Ways to be a Champion for Children. My name is Alan Friesen. I'm here and I want to tell you a little bit about adverse childhood experiences and what we're trying to do. There's this phenomenon called adverse childhood experiences called the shadow pandemic. It's even more, it's worse than COVID because it's extended longer and is going to last longer. Anyways, high ACEs scores result in high negative health consequences, negative life consequences, but there's hope. And these two ladies here with Lethbridge Family Services can talk to us about that. Lethbridge Family Services, if you're not familiar, they've been in our community for 100 years, more than 100 years, isn't it? And they do some fantastic things. Cindy and Lisa here, tell us about Lethbridge Family Services. Kick us off here.
Okay. Well, thanks, Alan, and thank you so much for having Cindy and I on your program tonight. We're really excited to be talking to you about 1000 Ways to Champion for Children and ACEs scores and ACEs experiences and our programs to support those individuals and families that have experienced, high ACEs scores or maybe just medium ACEs scores. So Lethbridge Family Services, like you say, has been around for over 100 years. We have 4 service departments. Our DeCapo program for people with disabilities, our home services for people who need home care, and immigrant services for support immigrants and refugees coming to Canada. And we represent the Counseling Outreach and Education program. So our counseling outreach, I'll start with outreach and education because it's a little bit easier to explain. Our outreach and education program provides educational series such as presentations, trainings, individual educations, workshops on a variety of topics from sexual violence, family violence, suicide, compassionate fatigue, to individuals or agencies that just are in need of support. And then Cindy and I, well, I'm actually the Director of Counseling Outreach and Education, and Cindy is the Clinical Supervisor, and I'll have her introduce herself in a second. But the Counseling Department is comprised of 6 counseling positions, in which a counselor is required to have a master's degree in a counseling psychology program and be registered with a professional body. A number of our all of our counselors actually are required to have experience in working with trauma, and part of their work here with us is that we continue to provide professional development in the areas of trauma, which is a lot of family violence, sexual violence, homelessness, poverty. When we see all those kinds of things, which actually impacts the ACEs scores. Our program runs for individuals from age 3 to end of life, and we provide individual counseling, group counseling, couples counseling, and family counseling. And I'll explain some of our programming a little bit later, but I'll have Cindy just explain a little bit about who she is and what her role is on the counseling department.
Yes, Cindy.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Ellen, again for having us on the show. Well, I am the clinical supervisor, so I am the person who supervises the counselors in our intake department around all of the client cases. So I've been a therapist myself for over 25 years in the community and private practice and teaching through the college. But I've been at Lethbridge Family Services for the past 3 years, kind of come full circle because I did my student practicum here years ago. So it's kind of a nice way to come fully around. So I get the pleasure of listening to the counselors talk about the various cases we work with, particularly the children's cases, of course, that we're talking about tonight. And we do individual, group, and family counseling, which we'll talk a little bit more about as the show goes on.
Nice. And Lethbridge Family Services, they're all over the place. Just yesterday, I heard from team member Corinne telling us about the HEART program. She did such a fantastic job with that. She's so enthusiastic and articulate and compassionate. Wow, it was great. And John Thompson, he's a beautiful human being. Man,
you interviewed him twice, I think, already, right?
I did. Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah.
About our outreach. Both of those, Corinne and John, represent our outreach and education department, and they're wizards at presenting to the community on such a variety of topics, and they're just really enthusiastic and love their jobs. And John is just such a outgoing creature. He's just fantastic. So.
And Sandra Mintz, amazing leader. My goodness.
Yeah.
And Michelle is so nice to work with, like to assist with the LFS fundraising. And in the past, I've supported a bit LFS fundraising programs and getting the kids the gifts at Christmas and that. And she's so compassionate and does such a fantastic job. Just what an amazing team at Lethbridge Family Services. Wow.
Yeah, we're, I can speak for myself, and I think Cindy would echo the same sentiments, is that Sandra is a big champion for children and people in general, really has a heart for social services and healthcare. And then Michelle's passion is, she's the director of advancement and communication. Her passion really is around, supporting families, children, individuals in ways that LFS could be a movement for them in their own lives. And one of those ways is the Angel Tree program that is run every Christmas, and that's for children and families that, don't have the financial ability, or even sometimes it's just the social abilities to go out and buy gifts. And just she champions, children and families to make sure that they do have gifts at Christmas time, so that all children feel loved and wanted. Not that gifts equal love and want, but when there's that pressure to buy, it's nice that we can support parents and families through that time. So yeah.
When you're a kid that's getting nothing under the tree and all your peers are, right, that's got to be tough, right? I mean, that's so yeah. I was talking to a man, a very successful businessman in town, great guy. But one thing that from his past, when he was in a very impoverished area, then he basically, it was like, I think it was Valentine's Day, and you're supposed to bring candies, and they didn't have candies. They had an apple, and he was like ashamed that it was just an apple, right? But if that's the expectation of your peers, right? That's kind of how it works, right? So
yeah, and that is part of that. The adverse childhood experience is part of it. Part of that is that is poverty, homelessness, feelings coping with trauma or family violence. And we know that can affect people's financial ability, but also their social ability to go out and buy presents. Sometimes it's not easy for parents to go out when there's a number of children, they're feeling stressed, they have anxiety, or their own trauma is preventing them from doing, from really performing the way they want to when they parent, right? So the Angel Tree program really supports that. And I think we've all had those experiences where, we feel a little bit shamed or off-centered from, not being the same as our peers, right? So if we can lift that pressure off a little bit, that's really a mandate of our agency,
Yeah, well, some of those just little tiny things, right? Even by not professionals, even by, like not by professional fundraisers like Michelle, but just as a person in the community that interacts with with a little person and has a meaningful little connection, and hey, how are you? And good to see you. And that's great coloring, and play peekaboo or whatever it is. That little connection from a caring adult makes a difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you bring up a wonderful point too, because not only do we support and care for those families that, are struggling, but, we often hear from the families that, provide the gifts or provide support to Lethbridge Family Services and say, I really want to teach my children. I really want this to be a value of my family that we're able to give because we're fortunate in this way. Or, I just want to instill those kind of values, even if it's a $5, $2 gift, or if it's a $2,000 gift. So we hear that from families and quite proud, right? Like I remember this past Christmas, there was a woman grandmother who came in with her granddaughter. And again, it was just, as a grandmother, it was something that she wanted to instill and wanted to instill in her granddaughter. And it was really heartwarming, and they loved getting their picture taken. And yeah, so.
Well, at the last LFS annual meeting, if I recall correctly, Ron Sakamoto and his granddaughter, wasn't it correct that they were the LFS? I can't remember the term, but they were acknowledged for their contributions. what a beautiful thing, a grandpa and a granddaughter who are working together to make their community a better place. How sweet is that, eh? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it really is families supporting families, right? And individuals supporting individuals. So,
yeah.
you know, our motto is a connected, inclusive community where people can thrive. So, yeah.
Exactly. I know that, you know, the more I do, the more research I do on adverse childhood experiences, the more I think what my vision or how I might be able to marshal some resources, attract some people who are interested in caring adults, is by supplementing the professionals. Like, you know, I certainly don't have the skill to help somebody who is, you know, very severely traumatized, and it's not actually a place that I would be strong enough to deal with, probably, and certainly wouldn't have the skills to help that child. But in other ways that we could have caring adults have connectivity, have positive relations with kids in the community, not related to that, just related to whatever. The one thing that just came up I thought was so cool, I called it, well, Jen from Big Brothers and Big Sisters and I called it Rotary Ready, Set, Drive. And so basically the idea is for kids who are going to get their driver's license. You know, some kids don't get their driver's license until they're like 25. And I don't understand that. Like, it reduces their opportunities and it reduces their, you know, ability to contribute too, if they got a family that, anyway. So the idea is this: we offer to, let's say, 13 to 17-year-olds help to study for the test so they can get their driver's license, so that they can go on the process to get their GDL and then, you know, get their license in the end. And so we get an adult who understands the rules and responsibilities of driving on the roads, understands English very well. There might be some kids at that age that have perhaps challenges with their their reading abilities, right? Maybe so much video and not so much reading, you know, causes where they don't recognize words that they know, but they don't recognize them in text form. So it's kind of a way to sort of have a functional literacy assistance or evaluation without even calling it that. It's just something to help these kids and help them connect in a very positive way with people in the community who care.
Yeah, and build on their own internal resources so that they can achieve the goals that they want to do, right? And know that there's supports out there besides their own family unit. There's community members, but we all know that when a little feels connected to community, then, you know, in the end, they become an adult that feels connected to their community, right? So that's a great program. And I love that you mentioned, Alan, that, you know, it can be support children with learning disabilities, because that's one of the areas when the adverse experiences that can be impacted is learning disabilities. English as a second language is another one. You know, so even with trauma, it's very difficult for individuals sometimes to be able to sit down without dissociating and to read something when they have that anxiety coming up around the need to perform, right? So, yeah.
If I recall Bruce Perry correctly enough, Bruce Perry talks about that if you have a child who's, you know, has unresolved ACEs of like 4 or greater, he or she is operating like 50% of what their mental capacity is. Like, you know, that's if the kid, I don't even know what IQ numbers are. Let's pretend it's 100. They can only tap out at 50 in that state, right? In that state that they're in, that they just can't function at their best, so they can't learn, and everything is a threat, right? How that's got to be a real challenging way to learn anything when you're fearful, right? So. Yeah.
Alan, I don't know if you heard too, but I'm super excited because Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry are writing a book together called What Happened to You. It's coming out actually in April. And I think the exciting thing about it is to show how ACEs can have a negative effect, but also what makes people be successful. And I think the link between Oprah and Bruce Perry will be how she had a huge ACEs score. Yes. And has become so successful, and then shifting the dialogue from what's wrong with you to what happened to you.
Nice.
And so I'm super excited.
Yeah. And man, you know, he is amazing. I got me a man crush on Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. I mean, she's so, you know, amazing and influential, and, you know, she'll make a whole, you know, she'll change the tide, right? You know, this is because all of the preventative stuff, like this is like, there's so much of this is preventable, right? Like, I mean, man, we stop one guy from beating or raping one woman or one child, and that changes the life for 50 people in the future, right? That if we stop that one time, right? And how it's got to be pretty, there's no little boy who, when he's 5-year-old, said, oh, I'm going to be beat and sexually abused women or children, right? There's no kid has that in their mind. So the steps that get little Johnny to be big Johnny, who's going to do that, somehow you can break that cycle. That's got to mean, I don't know how, but there has to be a way to stop that from occurring.
Yeah. No, I think with ACEs, it's so important to make sure that we do preventative things, but also what we can do to help children in our community right now. And LFS has got a number of programs, and counseling department does a lot of work with children and families.
Definitely. Yeah, your programs, I've been doing more of them. Like, you facilitate one through the province. What's it called? Is it Champions?
No, so that's what, so that was a great little segue there, Cindy, because I was just going to talk about, our Families Thriving Together program. So about a year and a half ago, the province set out an initiative to form a new way of delivering service throughout the province. And this new way of delivering service is called the Family Resource Network. And so there's a number, and they're a little hard to explain. So there's the Family Resource Network, which is the umbrella, the Ministry of Children's Services. And then they're delivering this Family Resource Network through a hub and spoke model. So in Lethbridge, there's there's a number of hubs, but a hub and spoke model, the hub is who does a lot of the larger community work, and then the spokes can deliver more of the service deliveries to families and children. So we have become a spoke to 2 hubs. So one of our hubs is Family Center, and the other one is Obacasan. So, and our spoke service delivery is called our Families Thriving Together program. So our Families Thriving Together program, there's 2 programs. Like I said, one is Indigenous and one is non-Indigenous. And so the program is run from a family perspective, in which we look at, in the first component is to support parents in learning about their own traumas and how to parent through trauma, right? Because we know that that's a stressor for parents, right? That not only do they have a child that's, having stressors or perhaps their own traumas or learning disabilities or whatever, maybe again, homelessness may be a factor, but we need to support the parent to, understand what's going on for themselves, and then help them support them to parent in a way that they feel good about themselves. And then the second component is for children, and that's the children's therapy, in which we support, and Cindy can speak more about what happens through what happens during that children's therapy. And then the third component is for the family to come together. And then the reason why we tied that together is what we are recognizing in the past is, about 10, 15 years ago, there was a shift in the counseling world to kind of move away from family therapy, especially when it comes to trauma, and deliver more of an individual approach. So, we have to focus right on the individual. But then what was happening is we'd have family members sitting around the dinner table, and mom did some of her trauma work. One child did their trauma work, another did trauma work. But then they were coming together, and they knew that each other all experienced trauma, but they didn't know how to support each other, and they didn't know what happened after the trauma. So our family component looks at bringing the family together and their learnings about learnings for themselves when it comes to their own individual, but how the family can thrive and really work through their trauma issues together, so that when they're sitting down at the dinner table and mom's stressed from taking the kids to different appointments, or dad is feeling stressed about the need to put the kids to bed that night, the daughter is stressed about the next day at school, or the son's stressed about he doesn't feel comfortable in his own body, those kind of things, then they can sit and talk and communicate together.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you would think them being honest about what they've experienced, they would have quite a bit of empathy for others who've experienced something similar, right? So you'd think that would be a kind of, that they could support each other and feel each other's pain or emotions that they've had to experience, right? Wow. Yeah. Oh, Cindy, Bruce Perry,
Yes.
I want to mention too. The Bruce Perry and I can't remember, Spear Chief, I can't remember her first name, an elder, the neurosequential development, brain development, and wisdom of the elders. You familiar with it?
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm excited about that. I think
Yeah.
it's April 6th and April 13th. I think that's going to be very valuable, especially in our community. I mean, who bears the burden, the most of ACEs in our community? It's the First Nation kids, right? And that's because 6 generations, guys that look like me have been beating the hell out of them and trying to, destroy their culture, right? I mean, it's bizarre. And bringing their original, their kind of holistic methods speaks to what Bruce Perry talks about in his books and what the Brain Story certification talked about as well when they talked about First Nation ways of child development. So I'm excited. I think that's going to be really valuable too.
Yes, definitely.
Cindy, I think you should talk for a while because I've been talking a lot. I'm not much of a host here. Sorry about that. And second, Lisa, I gave her a little bit of time. But Cindy, we should hear from you.
Well, I would love to talk a little bit about doing therapy with children. So we've got the Families Thriving Together program that Lisa talked about, and the component in there where we work with the children. Families could have one and more children that might come for individual counseling. And one of the areas at Lethbridge Family Services that we do a lot of is play therapy. And that's where we bring items like this into the online counseling. So my puppet, the lovely, beautiful puppet, can be brought into the therapy. We do in-house as well as online therapy with children and families. And we also do some art therapy. We do child-centered therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, emotion-focused family therapy, which a number of our counselors have been trained in. And for trauma, we have counselors trained in EMDR and ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy, which is kind of an offshoot from EMDR. It's gaining a lot of popularity in working with trauma. And
how's it different? How's it different?
It works more with metaphors than EMDR does. It still does the eye movements, so still doing the, eye movements, but they use a lot of metaphors, which seems to work really well with people who are into narrative therapy or storytelling.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Well, I'm actually not trained in ART, but 3 of our therapists are. And they would use, I have heard them speaking about things such as painting a picture of a memory that you would have, and then erasing it visually, and then implanting a memory that's more positive, a story that would reframing the story. And I'm probably not explaining it super well, so it'd be good to look up ART to see. But I know there has been a number of counselors that are looking into that training because it seems to work a little bit faster than EMDR in a lot of trauma cases.
I realize that EMDR is generally for PTSD people, but I did it and I didn't really have any even trauma, like a small T trauma, but I did 2 sessions and I found it very valuable. I kind of used it as sort of a growth development tool to kind of minimize or diminish a self-limiting belief that I had. And I found it to be quite effective. So it was great. 2 sessions, so that was pretty amazing. So, yeah. Yes.
So the therapy with the children is quite creative. We've certainly had to find ways online to be able to be a little more creative. Children are a little more active and they're jumping around and using devices that may not stay still. So we have a lot of great stories to talk about with each other as to sessions with working with children from 3 or 4 years of age on up, but it's been quite fun as well.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure that is a lot more challenging to do it over a Zoom type environment than in having the little people right in front of you. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we have the little people here, we can contain them in a room kind of thing, right? and get them quite interactive in what's happening in the playroom, because we have this great playroom where we can do sand tray or paints, so that's a little bit easier. But I think one of the things, and Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the online, one of the success stories from the online is the parent needs to check in at the beginning of the session and at the end of the session. And the parents are really enjoying those check-ins and really engaged with what's happened in the session. And so it's nice that our children's therapists do spend a lot of time with the parents too, but it seems this way there's a lot more involvement with the parents, because sometimes they're staying in the room or they're just, on the other side of the door. So the kids have access. We're typically, in person. Parent drops the child off and usually goes grocery shopping or something, which is great, right? Because they get their chores done.
Got to get done. They found
got to get it done.
Yeah. How women keep households running is beyond me. Like I don't understand it. Like it's amazing to me the value that women bring to all of the good things in the world. I don't think men value women enough. I mean, wow, they're just like every caring and compassion and making sure shit gets done. I got clean underwear. I don't have to go looking for it. It's just right in the drawer. It's amazing how that happens. So yeah. So I'm very appreciative of my lovely bride, Carola Friesen, of 37 years. Thank you very much, honey. Back to you, Lisa.
Back to me. Oh, okay. What would you like to know next?
Well, what other programs did we want to talk about? I was asking a question about there's an Alberta community advocate, community something. I took the training for it. I should remember what it's called. It was LFS does it. I'll find it. It's okay.
Okay.
There's so many.
Was programs. The first responders training?
No.
Sexual violence?
No.
Was it one of the outreach and education programs?
Yes.
Community helpers?
Yes, community helpers. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
So I took that program, and I've also signed up for the LFS Compassionate Care session.
Compassionate Fatigue this Friday.
Yes, this Friday. It's one, I think, on Friday, right? Yeah. So I signed up for that as well to see what I can learn from there. I probably spend 15 to 20 hours a week just studying ACEs research and reducing how does the individual or how does a community reduce adverse childhood experiences? And what I think I can do is draw in more, just carrying adults with a little bit of focus and a little bit of training, and I'm sure they can make a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want an army of champions for children.
Well, and I think that in our community, we've got a number of great social organizations, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit in Lethbridge. Like, we are quite lucky in that sense that we have a lot of organizations that are working hard. It's finding access, and we're doing better at working together. Mm-hmm. This hub and spoke model, with the one hub, there's 6 organizations, and the other hub, there's 7 organizations in which we're coming together, and we're trying to figure out ways to refer clients easier to different programs. So setting up easier referral models, I guess they would be called, and then looking at just different services without doing any duplication of services and things like that. So we're really starting in this community to talk more. We've always done that, but it's been less organized. It's usually been through community network. Now with this hub and spoke model, it's how we're delivering services, which is really great, right?
That's excellent.
And then so it's been really great. And then we're really fortunate. We've got excellent relationships with Alberta Health Services. We sit on a number of committees, such as the Sexual Violence Action Committee, and Cindy sits on the Lethbridge Elderly Abuse Resource Network. And, so those are different ways that we look at, what are some of the challenges and the successes that are happening in the community, and what do we need to do to change and navigate, because with COVID, our world had to change really quickly. Like Cindy talked about online work. We had to, within a week, we had to deliver services different. we had to make sure that our community understood it and our referral sources understood how we were going. And we've done really well. We've remained open. We had a very little effect on our clients when it came to delivering our services. And I think we're still moving well. And I think Cindy would be the best person to talk about, when it comes to client services and how COVID has affected, our families and children.
Yeah, I know before we went live, we were talking about the victim services unit that I'm involved with, and that Adonis, our program coordinator, and with that unit, we know that for a lot of families, man, you're trapped in the same house with the person who's abusing you. He ain't going to work, and you're not going to school. Well, that's a really shitty situation to be in, right? And that's happening. Hopefully now we can, the COVID restrictions will allow for a little bit more normalcy, and in that case, a little bit less abuse, or less frequent abuse, at least in that environment, right? So
we have seen increases of family violence and intimate partner violence. Unfortunately, they've been increasing a lot since this summer, right? And you're right. You have survivors and perpetrators and children in the same household. You have financial stressors, health stressors just going to the grocery store, right? Remembering my mask, remembering to stay 6 and, medical stresses, and it really is increasing. My worry, and Cindy and I have spoken about this, is, when COVID's done, the families that are going to come out and be able to leave those situations is going to be huge, and we need to be there and we need to support them. And we'll navigate those times just as great as what we always do, but it's gonna be stressing. And we do know, again, that within family violence, sexual violence is sexual violence, financial, emotional violence, or abuse is all very real. And so families and children and individuals and adults, they're going to need it, right?
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
Well, COVID has affected families so much. And for children, we have to think about this in our community too. There's been so many changes for kids. Like at the beginning of COVID, they had the shutdowns of everything, which disrupted things like your regular eye appointments or your dental appointments. It disrupted going to school. It disrupted missing significant life events like graduation. For so many kids, they're graduating out of a box. Their life has completely changed, and they look towards adults for modeling how they're supposed to feel. And I think we've seen here at LFS for sure the anxiety of the adults, which can then impact the anxiety for the children. And that affects so many other things. And that adds to the stressors Lisa was talking about, with parents being out of work and losing jobs or being laid off. There's so many more stressors now.
I think Alan is frozen.
I think so too. Are you there, Alan?
But you know what, Cindy? I think we should talk about the resiliency of people.
Hey, there you go.
Hi, Alan. Hey, I was just going to take over your radio show.
We're like,
you froze. We've got it.
It just became the Lisa and Cindy show, Ellen.
Nice. Good job. Well, I could just go have a nap or something and let you two carry on.
Oh, that's great.
Hey, we have some comments. Would you like to hear some comments?
Sure.
All right. David Dooley says most, if not all, of the 10 original ACEs are associated with unsupportive and harmful parenting. If you're interested in the primary prevention of child abuse, visit advancedparenting.org. We find unique and powerful ways to teach everyone about parenting, and they are free. Scott Sweetman says he's back after my little disappearing act there. Okay, yes, I am. Thank you, Scott. Sierra Garner. We all love Alan. Sierra, that's so nice. That's his frozen face. Kayla saw my frozen face. All right. So I wasn't watching the chat comments, but now I did. We're back. Cindy, what I heard you talking about was that, COVID interrupted things like just normal eye appointments and blah, blah. And then there was 90 seconds in between I probably didn't hear. And then I think you wrapped it up with just about the financial pressures as well, right? That, the reality, there's a lot of jobs that have disappeared, and are they coming back? Like a lot of the food services ones, or a lot of the hotel type ones, or the entertainment ones, where are those jobs coming back to? I don't see anything anytime soon. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we just added that contributed to how the caregivers and parents would parent the children, because they're living the same realities.
Sure.
And disrupted life events. And then that was leading us into, well, what about the resiliency of children, though? And kids are amazingly resilient. I think if you go around the community, you've seen kids hanging around. They're actually really good with wearing the masks, by the way. The kids have been phenomenal. In my neighborhood, I walk around to walk my dog in the morning. The kids are wearing the masks on the way to the bus stops and on the way to school. I don't know if it's because it's been cold lately or they're just following restrictions. But, kids look at media, they look at parents, they look at family members, and they really look at peers for how they get their information and how they handle things. So one of the things, we should be recommending to parents is monitoring the social media, making sure those kids aren't looking at all the negative stories and, how it's affecting them. Have those dialogues with their kids about what the numbers mean, because, even as adults, we're exposed to so many different social media outlets. Some are giving us great information, some not so much, and it can add to the stress level. But kids are usually getting information from their peers. So we have to get that connection between caregivers and parents with their children to kind of help them. And they're doing lots of self-care stuff.
I know, just to, like, when you talk about getting children and getting information from their peers, if I can speak from my experience growing up, that wasn't very good information, generally.
Exactly.
What my 12-year-old friend thought he knew, he did not. He told me things that were not true at all, and I believed him. So,
That's entirely true, especially about sexuality questions, but we won't go there.
No, exactly. Yes.
Sometimes misinformation can lead to a great imagination, though.
Well, fair enough.
And communication, right? Going back, sometimes you go back to mom and dad and go, hey, whatever. So yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah.
I was going to mention this. You too, in your work, it's stressful work, right? Like, it's you have to bear witness to a lot of pain and suffering of fellow human beings. It's got to be hard on you, right? So you must have amazing self-care routines, incredible self-care routines. Lisa, you're first.
I was thinking that, I was talking a lot, so you might have gone to Cindy there first, but I'm all good. It's all good.
Cindy, are you ready?
Right. You know what? You are right. I've been a therapist for I think it's been a little over 20 years now, and love this work. I have had periods of burnout and I have compassionate fatigue. It can happen. It can sneak up on you very easily. You just find ways to, have good support systems, whether that's your family, whether it's you seeking counseling yourself, health, whatever it may be, spirituality, religious, whatever, when it comes to supports, whatever it is for you. Animals are a big one for me. I have lots of, I have a horse and I have dogs and cats and everything like that. So and my husband's great too. But when it comes to working with individuals, my passion has always been with trauma, working with individuals who've experienced trauma. It is such a privilege to witness someone's experience of their lived experience of their story and what they've gone through, and to be present during that vulnerability of healing is, it's such, it's an honor, it's a privilege, it's something I never take lightly in my years of practicing. And, you know, it can be difficult, but I love it. I just love this work. I stumbled on it. Like, I stumbled upon counseling. I didn't always want to be a counselor. I was going in a different direction, and I was like, hey, what's this over here? Right. And it just seemed pretty natural to me. But I really, really appreciate you bringing that up, because it is something that Cindy and I are very aware of when it comes to our counseling team and our outreach and education team. And, you know, we do provide time for our counselors to get together, and we provide internal consult, and they consult with Cindy regularly. But also we do sharing time, in which they, you know, that sharing time is when the whole team gets together and they talk about personal and professional situations that they're going through, and it's to offset that compassionate fatigue or vicarious trauma. And then we do lots of professional development, which is known to support to offset vicarious trauma as well. And then we do, you know, if we can, we will do like just team building and just getting together. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because it is so important in this work that we take care of ourselves. Yeah.
You know what? It's important for everybody right now. Everybody's got a toxic load of COVID that they're dragging around, whether they want it or not. It's there, right? So whatever you can do, and there's 1,000 ways to do this, but whatever you can do to, you know, to regulate yourself, to feel good yourself, to know some joy in your day, right? To have some pleasurable experiences, to enjoy this meal, to enjoy this breath. Those are like super important. Lisa, I want to mention one thing. You went through all the things that were important to you. And then there was your horse and your dogs, and then my husband. Yeah. So why I think that's so appropriate. My wife has 28 horses. All of them are before me, and 2 cats. There's 28 horses, 2 cats, then me. So
I think that's not true. Doesn't she have a little barn full of cats?
Oh, yes, she does. Yes. Oh, no, wait a minute. You think all the barn cats count ahead of you? Is that what you're saying? She's got 2 in the house.
Yeah. I was gonna say I do know your wife, and she's instructed me actually in riding. She's a wonderful instructor. So oh yeah, and you know, it's so funny that I always tell the story of when, you know, I met my husband. Actually, I knew his dog came before I did. So and that was very clear. But our passion we came together because our passion of animals. So yeah.
Nice.
I think he's listening tonight too. So
I'm sure you have enough love to share for all the animals, including the furless one. You're okay. You got enough to share with him as well.
And it's not a hierarchy. It's, you know, and thanks for instilling some of that humor too, which is so important in all this work. Yeah.
Cindy, what keeps Cindy at her absolute best, at her amazing self?
You know, I think humor is super important, because if you can laugh through this, it's pretty amazing considering everything everybody's been through. But I'd have to say, like, creative things too. Being able to listen to music, being able to draw, dance, move, play. I think, you know, as adults, we forget to play. And if there's anything I would give as advice to parents, would be to play more, because we often lose that ability. It's like we forget how to play when we get older, but it's so important. And I think that connection that Lisa was talking about to other people. You know, I have an amazing group of women that meet virtually now for our book club. We used to meet in person, so we're missing all of those abilities, but online's been kind of interesting. And, you know, the community has done a lot of things. Retailers and restaurants and places have gotten quite creative in Lethbridge as to what they do. I mean, Andrew Hilton's does different wine tastings online, and New West Theatre has done a lot of things creatively. Lots of local theatre groups have been doing different things. Like, I think just trying to look for ways to kind of feel like we're still normal has been amazing.
That's awesome. I want to mention about Lethbridge Music Theatre. A couple weeks ago, I got a Zoom thing to join their thing on Saturday night. And it was kind of like where there wasn't no auditions for anything, but it was just a way for people to sing songs, basically, for an audience, right?
Yeah.
And it was such a supportive group. Everybody got up and they sang their song, and everybody's clapping and doing their hand jazz applause thing on Zoom, whatever that's called. And they were such a supportive group, right? That it was so sweet. It was very nice. Yeah. But one thing I want to mention, Cindy, Bruce Perry, when he talks about helping people, helping little people, and their neurosequential development, he often talks about the rhythmic, repetitive, the movement and the motion and the music, right?
Yeah.
So I think everybody should dance every day.
Yeah.
Everybody should sing every day. My prescription for singing is 16 songs. I need 16 songs a day just to be good. I can sing 20. I'm just a little bit better, but less than 16 ain't enough.
And what are you singing to, Ellen?
This is my little studio right here. Every day around 4 o'clock, I come here. I crank this microphone up to about there, and I sing for an hour.
Any particular song that's your favorite?
Oh, I got tons of them. I know about 200 songs. And so I don't try and sing the same ones every night. I shake it up, or every afternoon. It's usually around 4 o'clock is when I sing. But it is such a physical conditioning thing. Like I seriously, my whole core is like, it goes from my rib cage and then down and in, like it's never done that before. So anyways, there's something on your core that is working really good. I've lost weight. I've toned up, and my voice is sounds to me really good. Others may disagree, but I really like how my voice sounds. I have these headphones, so I can't hear what it sounds like. And anyways, I just have the greatest time doing that. So
nice.
Self-care, important.
Yes.
Whatever works for you. If you do a cappella singing show, I'll come watch you though. So tell me.
I think we need to change next week's topic.
What are we going to talk about?
I think we're going to be doing a dance class instead.
A dance class? Are you leading?
I think, yeah, because aren't we going to talk about next week is around community perspective on ACEs. So we could maybe do some kind of, maybe we should start it off with some kind of bilateral stimulation exercise. Right? Wouldn't that be fun?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. You're the therapist. You're the professionals. You set it up, and then you lead. I'm with you.
Okay, let's do some kind of bilateral stimulation exercise next week that involves somatic experiencing. Absolutely.
All right. Wait a minute. It was a bilateral experience that involves somatic
body.
Okay.
We'll do a body exercise.
Will other people, because I didn't quite get it when you just described it, will other people know what that means, Lisa?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll explain it. Yeah, no problem. We'll explain it. Yeah. We'll do some bilateral. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We have you sort of had a little kind of a script for me, which I have not looked at once. So I guess we don't need that.
Oh, yeah.
We got 12 minutes left. What things do we want to talk about that I have failed to ask you?
I think, just talking a little bit more about our counseling programs.
Yes, good idea. We have 6 counselors. Did I hear that correctly?
We have 6 counselors, and we do individual, like we talked about, we do individual, group, couples, and families. We provide services to the rural areas as well. So if you're living in Crow's Nest Pass or Pincher Creek, Waterton, Tabor, Milk River, we can provide supports to you. I think when it comes to our, in order to access our services, you call our counseling intake department and just speak with them regarding what your needs are. They'll do a very short screening with you regarding what's the presenting problem, if there's any risk factors, and as well as if there's any, financial hardships and what your financial ability is. We are a subsidized counseling program. So, typically right now in the community, it costs anywhere from about $150 to $180 to see a practitioner. So we are able to subsidize those costs because we're funded by the provincial government for a number of our programs. And I'm going to let Cindy take over because I'm just going to have a little coughing attack. So,
all right. Well, be careful with that.
And I think we want to mention that we have an awesome group coming up, Ellen. We're doing intakes for it right now. It's the 2S LGBTQAI plus group, Healing Journeys group for that community. And any members of the community can call our intake office to have an intake. And that's starting in April, but they're doing the intake starting next week. So we've sent posters out to various groups in the community, but anyone listening can certainly give us a call too. We've run Healing Journey for Men and Healing Journey for Women. So this is going to be a little bit of a departure, which will be really great for the community.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean the young people, the kiddos with the differences are the kiddos that are most likely to experience ACEs, right? That's just the reality of it, right? If color's a little different or religion is different or their sexual orientation or how they dress or how they talk or so you definitely need some greater awareness and greater acceptance. You know, we've talked about diversity, inclusion, and equity for I don't know how long, right? But man, I don't know how. There's got to be a barometer where somebody can say it is 12% better than it was 5 years ago. I don't know if that's true. I hope it is, but do you think it is?
Well, it's a hard one. I think there's a lot of people trying to champion for diversity. But unfortunately, as we saw with Black Lives Matter and some of the things that happened in the last year, there's still a ways to go.
Yeah, definitely is. Mm-hmm. Yes. What else do we want to chat about?
Maybe resources in the community too, aside from LFS, especially for children. I mean, we've got a lot of great places that kids can be referred to, both online, in person. So we've got
but just talk about the Child Advocacy Center. How important is that going to be for our community?
Lisa, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so absolutely. So the Child Advocacy Center is a new program that's going to be started hopefully soon, is from what I understand.
Yep.
Being run by the Chinook Sexual Assault Center. And it's going to be really important in the lives of families and children who have experienced family violence, sexual violence, and need support when it comes to legal, medical, and psychological issues. So right now, you know, I think they're really working hard to find the financial supports in order to bring this initiative alive. We're the third largest city in Alberta, and we don't have a child advocacy center. That just is not right. You know, unfortunately, children and families with the stressors that they experience when they experience family violence and sexual violence, then find out that they have to go to Calgary to receive some of the services that a child advocacy center would provide, is really sad for our community. So I'm hopeful that our community will
super important for our community, right? We're what, 2.5 times the national average for child sex abuse? If I understand correctly, like that. Or we're number one on intimate partner violence, aren't we, in terms of our stat? So yeah, we need to help.
When it comes to Alberta, yeah, and we've been providing services to children who've experienced family violence and sexual violence. You know, when it comes to counseling services, right? And the community so far has been doing it. You know, I think we've been doing a good job in the sense of different agencies do the different work, but I think now, and we sit on various committees with one another, so we've done it. We've done the work. But now to have a center where, families could come and actually spend time there and get that customized support that they need, and then be referred out to different organizations to get, specialized support, such as, like counseling, for example, would be really beneficial. Yeah. When you asked about it, I was a little stunned because it's the magnitude of what of that project. And Chinook Sexual Assault Center and their partners and their board members are really doing a good job. I know other community members are supporting them. They're really doing a good job to bring this to our community. So let's hope it works.
Well, I think it's going to be a huge asset for our community. Really, really important to minimize the trauma, to not re-traumatize these little people, right? But to get the activity stopped, right? To get the abuse stopped by being able to access fully the criminal proceedings, right? That everything works effectively to stop the abuse of the kids, right? The kiddos. So Mel Meyer and Courtney Atkinson pledged $100,000 to make it happen.
Oh, that's amazing. That's I hadn't heard that, Alan. So that's and that just speaks to our community, right? Like it really does speak to our community.
Definitely.
It's just amazing. Our counseling department a little over a year ago had a anonymous one-time funding given to us and a donor, and I started crying when I found out that they were donating funds to us, and it speaks to our community, right? We do have a very caring and thoughtful community. We need to still make some changes, which is always the case. We should never stop changing, no matter if we're community or if we're individuals. But we do. We're good. We do. Yeah.
Yes, you are right, Lisa.
Yeah. As we do. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Cindy, did I interrupt you? We were talking, and then I mentioned about the child advocate.
No, that's excellent, and it fits in so well with all the resources that we do have. Like we've got the Boys and Girls Club, and Opakossin, and Big Brothers Big Sisters Family Center, Outreach. There's so many great groups that are trying so hard to be champions for children, and I just love that we're working together. And LFS is partnered with so many different groups, which makes it happen.
Yeah, it's awesome. Where resources are scarce, right? The more we can work together to serve those little people, to have those little people have great lives. And man, if we think about this long term, what's going to happen, right? We're going to have more people who are healthier, who are happier, who live better lives, who have better relationships, who can learn better, who can contribute back to their communities better, who are way less likely to be addicted, who are way less likely to commit suicide, right? That's the composition of our society when we kind of start moving down this road and getting these things in play, right? That's the way I see it anyways. Do you agree?
100%. We need to work together on this. What is that saying? Takes a village. It really does.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. Yes, this is gonna be excited. I'm really stoked about what you two are gonna get together for next week. Are we gonna engage some other LFS team members as well?
I don't know about that. I could find out. Maybe we'll see if Miss Mintz will show up.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm excited to find out what we're going to do there. That's good. It's only 6 more sleeps now till I figure out what we're going to do. So that's awesome. So I think basically next week, come back next week for the surprise event that we're going to have. That is going to be amazing. It'll get you 100% of your best, right? Lisa, that's the guarantee we're making.
It's going to be 1,000 ways to champion for children using your body.
Hallelujah. That sounds great. Okay, that's what we're going to do.
Let's move it. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. And if you have some questions for our guests, or if you have questions that LFS might know an answer to, you can certainly reach out to me or to LFS, but you reach out to me through even the chat. Oh, wait a minute. Do we have other chat things? I didn't go look back there. Hang on a second. Okay. There's been a lot here. Great presentation, Scott says. Sierra says, serious question though. How are parents supposed to give their pandemic-made babies the normal life and normal growth as a baby would before COVID? Sierra, that is a very valid question. Parenting is tough, has always been tough. Like, parents are always a blessing and a curse to their children. That's the reality of it, right? But in these times, man, way more challenging. Let's try. Do you ladies got something you want to share with Sierra about an answer regarding that? How do you give kids a normal experience in these times?
I think there's been lots of ways that parents have been trying to do things through COVID, because you can connect with family members online. That's one way. If you don't have the ability to connect online, there have been ways to go out on walks with your children so they can at least be exposed to seeing other people, but staying safe, masked and socially distant. And I think, there's ways within your family to have that reading to children, listening to music, dancing, doing the things that you still do to connect with the neurology of the child's brain can still happen.
Well said. Oh, Lisa, you had something?
Alan, sorry, I think Sierra, her question centered around COVID babies. Was that normalizing the COVID babies?
Yeah.
I think it's also the recognition that this has created a big change, and we don't know how to navigate it through it all right now. And normalizing it and giving ourselves the compassion that we deserve and that we need in order to look at different ways that we're changing, and the world has changed around us. So I know some of our staff was, and even some friends, had COVID babies, and things like joining a mummy group or joining a father support group wasn't available to them in the way in which, so they were quite isolated when they first had their children, and they were hoping for, in some cases it was their first child and they were hoping for an experience, but it really was around, looking at this is change, and change is hard, and change isn't always fun, but having that honesty and the transparency and the vulnerability, and then looking at different ways of doing it, and just really sitting with that, and just, again, that compassion, coming back to oneself. Who knows how to who knows how to parent through COVID?
Yep.
We're all learning that right now.
Exactly.
We're all trying to learn of how do you navigate your work life. So how do you have a baby during COVID?
Yeah.
I don't know, but let's reach out and figure it out together, right?
Exactly. And that's about the best advice we got for you, Sarah. Who do you have that you can ask, that you could talk to, that you can brainstorm different ideas? We might even have something different by next week. That could happen. So, but I certainly feel your pain, because parenting is hard work to do in the best of times. Exactly. And with this, that's another complication that you're right. In some cases, it's just not fair. But long term, I wonder if COVID in the end won't be quite a blessing, like in terms of that we will reprioritize, we will have a greater appreciation for how our individual health is tied to our neighbor's health and everybody's health in the whole world. And perhaps we should have a more, what would you call it, a communal effect to increase everybody's health. And in so doing, we enjoy better health too, right? So anyways, that's kind of, maybe that'll happen. Wouldn't that be sweet?
And that's a great thing, is that whenever there's been big world changes, we don't know how things are going to unfold. But, it's like Cindy said, we do often go back to what's natural for us. And we know that play is natural for humans. We know that connection is natural for humans. So we do go, but that play and connection just might look differently.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I would suggest to you, there's going to be way less professional sports, way less professional music, because you can't draw the audiences to make it work, or like in these times, right? So what if there was a resurgence of amateurs, a resurgence of people just doing it just because they want to do it and it's an enjoyable experience for them? I think that'd be a sweet thing. Anyways, next week, we're going to chat some more. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. That was a fantastic talk. So obviously, don't bother sending me a script, because I'm not going to follow it anyway.
That's all good.
But next week, oh bad. I think we're socially distanced. I would have got some on you there. Sorry about that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Alan. It was educational and entertaining, and I think those are two great mediums to come together in order to deliver what can sometimes be a really difficult subject, is trauma, right? As adverse childhood experiences. But Thank you so much. Like, we really appreciate it. And we appreciate the support that you've always given to Lethbridge Family Services. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.